They told you life peaks in your 20s. That by 30, you should have it all figured out. A house, a family, a career. And if you don't, something's wrong. But what if the world's been lying to you? Because life doesn't end when the wrinkles come. It begins when the mask comes off. This is not your end. This is your awakening. This is why life really begins at 40. You've been running for decades now, chasing some illusion of success, trying to live up to the expectations of parents, society, and social media. You climbed ladders that leaned against the wrong walls. You played roles just to make others happy. You silenced your intuition because it didn't fit the script. You know the script: graduate, get a job, get married, buy the house, start a family, work for 40 years, retire. That's the version we're sold. But here's what they didn't tell you. None of those things guarantee joy. None of those things define you. Here's the truth they don't want you to hear. You can build a beautiful life, even if you start at halftime. At 40, the fog begins to lift. You start asking better questions. Questions like, what am I really here for? Who am I outside of all these titles? What if my best years aren't behind me, but ahead? Because midlife isn't a crisis. It's a crossroads. There was a man named David who spent 20 years working up the corporate ladder. He became a VP, earned 6 figures, had the fancy house, but every day he drove home with a knot in his stomach. At 42, after a panic attack in a parking garage, he quit, moved to a smaller city, became a teacher. For the first time in my life, he said, I feel alive. When you're young, you chase validation. You want to be liked, respected, admired. You wear masks. You fake confidence. You play the part. But at 40, something cracks. And what leaks through is the real you. Not the version trained to impress. Not the version curated for likes. But the version born to impact. It's not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. In your 40s, you no longer hustle for your worth. You remember you were worthy all along. You stop trying to be everything to everyone. You start becoming something deeply meaningful to yourself. You begin to trust your gut again. You realize that success without peace is failure in disguise. You stop proving. You start becoming. Sandra, a marketing executive, had always played the part, polished, always agreeable. But at 41, during a retreat, she broke down sobbing, admitting she'd never pursued her dream of painting. A year later, she opened her first art exhibit. That was the first time I truly met myself, she said. Let me say this clearly. You are not too late. You are right on time. Colonel Sanders was broke at 40. Vera Wang didn't design her first dress until 40. Morgan Freeman got his big break at 52. Your story isn't behind schedule. It's just now getting interesting. You've lived enough to know what matters. You've seen enough to recognize the fakes. You've felt enough to stop wasting time on what doesn't feed your soul. You've been taught to fear aging. But what if aging is just evolving? What if time doesn't run out, it refines you? You have more wisdom now, more clarity, more courage, more fire. The question isn't, is it too late? The question is, what will I do with the time I've been given? At 45, Jamal used his retirement savings to open a small bakery in his community. Everyone said he was too old to start over. But in 2 years, that bakery became a hub, a place where stories were shared, teens got jobs, and locals found warmth. It wasn't just about bread, he said. It was about healing. At 40, you begin to see the nonsense for what it is. You stop chasing approval. You stop comparing. You stop living for the algorithm. You start living for what's real. You simplify. You cut the noise. You say no to things that drain you, and yes to the things that light you up. You stop looking for permission to rest, to breathe, to change. You realize peace is success. Purpose is success. Loving who you are when no one's watching. That's success. You may have fewer friends, but they're deeper. You may take longer to trust, but you no longer betray yourself to belong. This is your power, to choose alignment over appearance, to choose meaning over noise, to choose yourself and still have room to love others better. Maya turned off social media at 43. She said she didn't recognize her own thoughts anymore. Within weeks, she found herself journaling again, reconnecting with old friends, rediscovering her passion for poetry. I didn't lose connection, she said. I reclaimed it. By 40, you realize success isn't one size fits all. It's not about titles, not about having the most followers, the biggest car, or the perfect life on paper. It's about alignment. It's about waking up and feeling right in your own skin. You stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of me?" You let go of borrowed dreams. You redefine success as peace in your chest, joy in your work, love in your relationships. Mark was a lawyer who had everything on the outside, but inside he was drained. At 44, he stepped away from his firm and started a woodworking business. People laughed, until 6 months later, he sold his first $10,000 custom piece. "I don't care if I ever make what I used to," he said. "I finally feel proud of what I create." Letting go is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. At 40, you start releasing what no longer fits: old wounds, toxic ties, outgrown identities. You let go, not because you're giving up, but because you're growing up. And in that release, you find relief. You realize not everyone can come with you. And that's okay. You're not here to shrink for comfort. You're here to expand into truth. Alina had been in a 15-year marriage. Comfortable, but lifeless. At 42, she left. Everyone said she was crazy to start over. But 2 years later, she's writing, traveling, and recently started a podcast helping other women reclaim their voice. "I didn't end a marriage," she said. "I began a life." At 40, relationships shift. You no longer settle for surface. You crave soul. You'd rather have 3 deep connections than 30 shallow ones. You start showing up with more honesty. You speak your truth. You ask for what you need. And you stop dancing around red flags just to keep the peace. You realize love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. And that real intimacy, whether in friendship or romance, comes from showing your scars, not hiding them. At 41, Darren called his childhood friend after 5 years of silence. They'd fallen out over ego. "I realized life's too short to be right all the time," he said. They met, cried, and rebuilt. "We're not the same boys we were," Darren shared. "We're better men now. Your body, once something you tried to fix, is now something you start to feel. You stop comparing it. You start listening to it. You honor rest. You crave movement, not to punish yourself, but to stay alive. You eat to nourish, not numb. You walk for joy, not just steps." At 40, your body becomes less about image and more about intuition. You start asking, "What do I need? How do I feel?" You start trusting the signals you used to silence. Nina used to run marathons, trained obsessively, counted every calorie. At 45, she gave it all up. "I realized I was running from myself," she said. Now she hikes every morning, phones off, breath steady. "For the first time, my body isn't a project. It's home." Something shifts in your 40s. You start thinking long-term, not in years and impact. You ask, "What will I leave behind? Who will I lift?" You realize legacy isn't fame, it's influence. It's how you made people feel. It's the wisdom you passed down, the love you gave freely, the lives you touched quietly. You become less obsessed with being remembered and more committed to making meaning now. Elsa, 48, started a community garden in her neighborhood. No grants, no fame, just passion. Kids came, neighbors bonded, elders shared stories. When she passed, they named it Elsa's Roots. Not because she was famous, but because she made something grow. By the time you reach 40, you've likely attended more funerals than weddings. The sting of mortality becomes real. The question is no longer, "What do I want to be when I grow up?" but "What will I leave behind when I go?" This is the age where legacy begins to matter. You start thinking about the example you're setting, the values you're embodying, the people you're influencing, your children, your students, your clients, your community. At 40, You're old enough to lead by example and young enough to pivot toward your truest purpose. It's not about chasing status anymore. It's about significance. You stop comparing timelines with others. You realize the goal was never to win the race, but to run it well, with intention, with heart, with soul. What matters now is whether you're becoming someone your younger self would admire and your future self would thank. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. The truth is, most people die with their music still in them. But at 40, you have a second chance. You can sing now. You can live now. You can write your own eulogy with every action, every word, every moment lived in alignment with your core. Don't wait until it's too late. Your legacy is built in the ordinary moments you show up fully present. Here's a painful truth. Many people spend their lives outsourcing their self-worth, chasing approval, shrinking themselves to fit in, doubting their gut. But at 40, that dies. This is the rebirth of self-trust. You stop second-guessing yourself. You've lived long enough to know the difference between a passing trend and your inner compass. You've made mistakes, but you've survived them. You've seen how doubting yourself delays your progress, and how listening to your inner wisdom creates alignment. Now, you choose differently. You start trusting your no, trusting your yes, trusting that your dreams are not foolish, and your truth is not too much. You no longer need validation to feel valuable. You begin to take yourself seriously. You write the book, launch the project, say what you mean, set the boundary, reclaim your body, your time, your energy. You know your worth, not from ego, but from experience. You've lived through enough to say, I know what I need. I know who I am. And that voice inside you, the one you silenced for years, it's back, louder than ever. There's a revolution that happens at 40. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't post about itself on social media. It happens quietly, in early mornings of peace, in long walks of clarity, in hard conversations of truth. It happens when you stop asking for permission to be yourself. You stop proving. You stop performing. You just become. This is where life starts to feel different, deeper, more grounded. You realize you don't need to hustle for worth. You don't need to overcompensate for fear. You don't need to control everything to feel safe. You just need to show up, fully present, and own your moment. This is the age where you redefine success, where you trade perfection for peace, where you forgive yourself and others, where you unclench the fists of your past and open your hands to the miracle of now. This is the quiet revolution, and it's the most powerful one of all.